They used to look down upon Bitcoin, Ethereum, and all of these things that came up. And today we are sitting here in 2025 where the US Fed now wants to use crypto to their benefit.
As cryptocurrency will have treasury bill as the underlying, and treasury bill will be the underlying for dollar. So what you're saying is that I have something as an instrument which is a vacuum as an underlying and which is relying on a vacuum to justify its cost. Simply not believable.
Why gold is preferred is because it is legitimately looked as a store of value, right? There is finite gold which is there, and similarly is the case made for Bitcoin also, that there is finite number of Bitcoins, more can't be produced.
What are the checks and balances for that?
Hi Sandeep sir.
Hello.
So, we have done a lot of rounds of podcast, and this one is particularly interesting because it is somehow interlinked to what you have claimed or said in last of your podcast, is that the rising US debt situation, and how alarming it has become, that it is almost at the tipping point. And it is now sort of proven, maybe because there have been a lot of talks recently that are coming out of US, which is pertaining to them going to crypto, right? Where they want to basically now uh, make a backbone out of the crypto as their, let's say, sort of reserve thing. Number one, what do you make of it? This entire talks that are coming out that they want to shift. Is it to hide their problem? Is it to mask their problems? And is it even legally or, let's say, practically possible that can this thing entire be the base be shifted from gold or the how it used to happen to now to crypto?
Very interesting perspective, Vishwas. And all I'll say is that we are living in a with a global reserve currency, which used to have a gold as the backbone, which was migrated to petrodollars, where supposedly providing security was the backbone. And from there, we are now moving to crypto as the underlying for the dollar. How much gold is in Fort Knox is anybody's question,
Right.
which is unanswered for sure.
Hmm.
And I don't believe that post 1971, when the petrodollars were introduced, from then till date, there'll be all gold being saved in the Fort Knox or the other storage places for that.
Right.
How now we will be, the world has started dealing in oil also and including Saudi and all across. Uh, and oil has not remained as the underlying for the dollar. Trading in oil is not restricted, petrodollars don't exist. Now we are looking at making a virtual currency as the underlying for the dollar. I like to highlight that there was a time when none of the central banks were prepared to accept virtual currency as a
Right.
acceptable instrument for any of their transaction.
Absolutely.
And today we are saying that it will be the underlying for the global reserve currency as the whole,
Right.
the background of the global reserve currency. Don't
Absolutely.
you find this is illogical?
Yeah. The most surprising thing about this is that there was uniformity amongst all the governments, all the world governments, that they don't want to regulate this industry. They don't want to. They used to look down upon Bitcoin, Ethereum, and all of these things that came up. And today we are sitting here in 2025 where the US Fed now wants to use crypto to their benefit.
See, stable coin, supposedly the currency which has to be underlying for the dollar, as is being announced currently, accepted only in Pakistan, and that has been the background for
Right.
that. And from there, how it will be accepted and made a foundation for global reserve currency, and how that global reserve currency will be expected accepted by all the other countries or for the instrument of transaction and settlement is a point of fundamental question and approach in terms of what we want to believe and what we don't want to believe. I have been talking to you earlier, and I maintain that very strongly, and it is evident on the data which we are seeing regularly that that US debt is unjustified in terms of the size itself, not sustainable. With the current revised rates of interest, it is certainly not going to be serviced, and it is not restricted to that as per my understanding. The
Right.
debt could be much larger than much deeper than what it is shown as the Fed related debt. How there are other currencies or other countries or other economies on basis of which this is done, how many treasury bills were issued, and how many treasury bills were bought by banks. And now we are saying that the treasury bills which don't have an underlying because they are itself based on debt, they and as cryptocurrency will have treasury bill as the underlying, and treasury bill will be the underlying for dollar. So what you're saying is that I have something as an instrument which is a vacuum as an underlying and which is relying on a vacuum to justify its cost.
Hmm.
That's simply not believable. I
Absolutely.
don't think that that is sustainable and that can be a format. Even if people believe it for some period, they will continue doing that. But then that status has to reduce over a period of time.
Right. But sir, just to, if let's say the counter question to this would be that why gold is preferred is because it is legitimately looked as a store of value, right? There is finite gold which is there, and similarly is the case made for Bitcoin also, that there is finite number of Bitcoins, more can't be produced.
What are the checks and balances for that?
Absolutely, I'm coming to
There's
that
no
only.
limitation related to you're claiming this is finite, you're claiming that gold is finite. Then why were you going for petrodollars? Because that is not finite. I'll provide security for you is not an instrument which I can evaluate to be underlying for the global reserve currency.
Right.
So, services and store of value are two different aspects.
Hmm.
I can't have them treated as one. And they cannot be the background or the underlying for what we are talking in terms of the dollar value. So, it's a complete global illusion and a perception. How the valuations are being done, how the purchasing power parity is being maintained, what is the underlying, what is the level of consumption, what is the debt to GDP. See, one thing I'll tell you very simply is that on a global GDP of around $100 trillion,
Hmm.
the global debt is $300 trillion. Have you ever heard of a fiscal gain?
Never. It's always deficit.
It's always deficit. Now you tell me simply by mathematics alone, or a simple elementary guy can tell that consistent deficits, how can they address the deficit?
But
So we are living in an era where everything is
hmm,
in form of round tripping I shared with you or in other formats. We
unjustified
are just living on
valuations.
perceptions and valuations. We are
Right.
not living in a real environment. There is a gap, the gap is increasing consistently, and we are happy to accept that and believe that that gap has to be a part of the life. So this is simply outrageous.
But sir, what is the solution for this? Now, I'm not talking about crypto here. Let's move away from that.
So there has to be a reset.
Yeah, when we reset. So what I'm talking about is, for example, let's assume you are heading, let's say, some council or some world global council, which let's say you are appointed as the chief economist or the chief, let's say, finance minister of the world. For let's say, जैसे वो पिक्चर आई थी ना नायक 7 दिन के लिए.
I can. Anyway,
So
continue.
so वैसे ही अगर let's say if there were credible people who were credible economists, credible finance ministers, who could take deliberate calls to do the world reset, the global financial reset, what do you think? What levers would have to be pulled in order to go back to the scenario wherein everything is correlated with demand and supply? Everything is brought in where valuations are not the driving factor, and it's rather the fundamentals.
That is the only way where things will be sustainable. Migration to this will be extremely painful. And that pain, that labor pain, I'll call, we'll have to go for the world to be born in a new format, which will be sustainable. Because till that time, we are living in illusions, we are living in perceptions, we are living away from reality.
Yeah.
So I don't see that how these things are happening and how these things are sustainable. I am happy, you are happy, everything fine. Round tripping, let's continue. Virtual currencies is the form of the gain. That cannot be the way. Simply that cannot be the way.
Then are we looking at times where, because like you said, there could be a combination of gold plus stable coins, and it's not that US hasn't already moved towards crypto. There are crypto ETFs in the market now which are readily available to invest in. But are we seeing at a potential uh, legalization of cryptocurrencies all over the world.
See the how the world is moving and how we have lived is because the other side will be painful, so I live with peace as long as I can and pass on the pain to the next generation.
Yeah,
That is the way and the trend it has been going on.
right,
So let somebody else decide. I'll pass on my time and
right,
let me sail through smoothly. I want peace and happiness.
right,
Now this is someday that has to blow out, and this is being misused in a very aggressive format at a multiple proportion. Now, where the ball is landing and where that round tripping is, the ball is in whose hand is anyone's guess. But I don't think that this can continue for very long for the scale
hmm,
which we have already reached. Like I'm sharing that on a 100 trillion GDP, we are still already carrying a 300 trillion debt in the government sector itself. The private debt will be additional.
right,
So, who is giving the debt?
hmm,
Can anyone answer me? Who is the lender?
hmm,
Borrower, I can understand, but who is the lender?
yeah,
There are no answer to these questions and there are no explanations to these equations.
absolutely.
How do we live forward and how do we move forward and who is taking the pain? The whole world will have to go through a reset on these factors.
Understood. Thank you so much, sir. I think again this was again another one, insightful one, and pretty interesting also. I think, guys, you can ask us in the comments. I'm sure you guys must have questions around this, and we'll take them. Also, suggest us some topics also that you would like us to cover, and we'll surely do them. So keep watching us. Do subscribe to the channel. Until then, stay aware and stay invested.